I thought I knew my family's darkest secrets until my 60th birthday party revealed the most shocking truth of all. Hidden in plain sight for 23 years was a grandson I never knew existed, stolen from a woman my son destroyed. Tonight, karma finally came knocking at my mansion door. Before we dive into this incredible true story that will leave you speechless, hit that like button if you believe karma always finds its way, and subscribe because stories like this one deserve to be heard. My name is Winston Blackthorne, and for 60 years, I believed I had built something extraordinary. Blackthorne Industries wasn't just a company, it was an empire that rose from absolutely nothing. I started with a borrowed computer in my parents' garage, writing code until my fingers bled, surviving on instant ramen and pure ambition. 3 decades later, that garage dream had become a $3.2 billion technology empire that changed how the world connects. But here's what they don't tell you about building an empire. Sometimes you become so focused on the kingdom that you lose sight of the king you've become. My marriage to Victoria had grown colder than a Chicago winter. We shared the same bed, the same address, the same last name, but we'd stopped sharing anything that mattered years ago. She lived for charity galas and society pages, while I lived for quarterly reports and board meetings. We were two strangers playing house in a mansion that felt more like a mausoleum. Then there was Trevor, my only son, 35 years old and still trying to prove he deserved the Blackthorne name. Our relationship had been strained for years, maybe because I expected him to be hungry like I was, to fight for everything like I had. Instead, he seemed content riding the coattails of my success, taking credit for victories he never earned, and avoiding responsibility for failures that were entirely his own. Every conversation between us felt like a negotiation, every family dinner like a corporate merger meeting where nobody trusted anyone else at the table. As my 60th birthday approached, Victoria insisted on throwing what she called the event of the decade. 200 guests, each one more powerful and influential than the last. Politicians who could change laws with a phone call, celebrities whose faces graced magazine covers, business moguls who controlled entire industries. The guest list read like a who's who of American power, and every single one of them would be celebrating in my honor at the Blackthorne estate. I'll be honest, I dreaded it. These weren't friends, they were connections. Business relationships wrapped in expensive suits and designer gowns, people who smiled at your face while calculating your net worth. But Victoria lived for these moments, and after 30 years of marriage, I'd learned to pick my battles. This wasn't one worth fighting. The estate was transformed into something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers casting golden light across marble floors, flowers flown in from 3 different countries, a catering team so professional they moved like dancers. Every detail was perfect, every element designed to remind everyone present that the Blackthorns didn't just have money. We had taste, influence, and the kind of power that opened doors others didn't even know existed. Trevor arrived fashionably late, as usual, with his new girlfriend Candace clinging to his arm like a designer accessory. She was beautiful in that artificial way that money could buy. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, perfect everything except the genuine warmth in her smile that no amount of cosmetic surgery could create. Trevor introduced her to everyone as if she were a trophy he'd won, another acquisition to add to his collection of temporary pleasures. But as I watched the elite of American society mingle in my home, sipping champagne that cost more per bottle than most people made in a month, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Success, wealth, power. I had it all, but standing in a room full of people celebrating my life, I felt more alone than I ever had. Little did I know that loneliness was about to be shattered by a truth so devastating it would rewrite everything I thought I knew about my family, my son, and the real cost of the Blackthorne legacy. The first time I saw him, he was refilling champagne glasses near the grand staircase, moving with a quiet confidence that caught my attention. Most catering staff try to blend into the background, invisible servants maintaining the illusion that luxury happens by magic. But this young man was different. He carried himself with purpose, his shoulders straight, his movements deliberate. There was something in his posture that reminded me of myself at that age. That hunger, that determination to prove himself worthy of being in rooms like this. I found myself studying his face when he wasn't looking. Mid-20s, I guessed, with skin the color of rich coffee and eyes that seemed to take in everything around him, but it was those eyes that stopped me cold. They weren't just observant, they were familiar. The shape, the intensity, the way they narrowed slightly when he concentrated. I'd seen those eyes before, staring back at me from mirrors and family photographs my entire life. Marcus, I called to my head of security, trying to keep my voice casual. Who's the young man by the stairs, the one with the catering company? Marcus followed my gaze and shrugged. New hire, I think. Background check came back clean. Damon Williams, 23 years old, college graduate, working his way through graduate school. Mother's a doctor here in the city. Damon Williams. The name meant nothing to me, but something about him kept pulling my attention away from conversations about stock portfolios and political campaigns. I watched him navigate the crowd with an ease that seemed almost natural, as if he belonged in rooms filled with power and privilege. Most young people his age would be intimidated by senators and CEOs. This kid looked like he was studying them. During a lull in conversation, I approached him directly. "You're not like most catering staff I've met," I said, accepting a fresh glass of champagne from his tray. He smiled, and for a moment my heart nearly stopped. That smile, I had seen it in old photographs of my father, in mere errors when I was his age, in Trevor's face before cynicism had hardened his features. "Just trying to do good work, sir. My mother always taught me that how you do anything is how you do everything." "Smart woman, what's her name?" "Dr. Nia Washington. She's a surgeon at Metropolitan General." The champagne glass slipped from my fingers, shattering against the marble floor. The name hit me like a physical blow, dragging up memories I'd buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself they were nightmares instead of reality. 23 years ago, that name had echoed through heated arguments between Trevor and me, through lawyers' offices and private investigators' reports, through the kind of family meetings where we decided how much money it would take to make problems disappear. Nia Washington, the brilliant pre-med student my son had gotten pregnant in college, the young woman who'd claimed Trevor was the father of her child, who'd begged him not to abandon her, who'd been systematically destroyed by my family's legal team until she had no choice but to disappear from our lives entirely. The mother of the grandson I'd never known existed. I stared at Damon with new eyes, seeing not just familiar features but the living proof of my family's greatest sin. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't fate. This was 23 years of buried truth standing in my living room, serving champagne to the same people who'd helped me cover up his existence. "Are you all right, sir?" Damon asked, genuine concern in those blackthorn eyes. I wasn't all right. I was standing face to face with the grandson I'd been denied, the child my son had abandoned, the living reminder of how the Blackthorn name had been built on more than just business success. It had been built on silence, lies, and the systematic destruction of anyone who threatened our carefully constructed image. The party continued around us, but my world had just crumbled completely. I found Trevor on the East Terrace, smoking a cigarette and scrolling through his phone like he was at some casual barbecue instead of the most important night of my life. The sight of him lounging against the marble railing, completely oblivious to the bomb that had just exploded in my chest, made my blood boil in ways I hadn't felt since building my first company. "We need to talk. Now." My voice came out harder than I intended, but I was past caring about his feelings. Trevor looked up, annoyed at the interruption. "Dad, can't this wait? Candace is inside networking with the governor's wife, and I promised I'd—" "Damon Williams." I watched his face like a hawk watches prey. "Ring any bells?" The color drained from his skin so fast I thought he might faint. The cigarette fell from his fingers, and his phone clattered onto the stone terrace. For 35 years, I'd seen Trevor lie, manipulate, and charm his way out of every consequence. But this stripped away every mask he'd ever worn. "Dad, I can explain." 23 years, Trevor. 23 years I've had a grandson I didn't know existed because you were too much of a coward to tell me the truth. My voice was rising and I didn't care who heard us. "That young man in there serving drinks to my guests is my flesh and blood, and you let me believe he didn't exist." Trevor's hands shook as he tried to light another cigarette. "You don't understand the situation back then. I was in college. I had my whole future ahead of me, and she was what? Black? Poor? Not good enough for the Blackthorn name? Each word tasted like poison in my mouth. So you decided to destroy her instead? I didn't destroy anyone. Trevor's voice cracked like he was 17 again. I was 22 years old, Dad. I wasn't ready to be a father. Nia understood that. She agreed it was better if she agreed. I grabbed him by the shoulders, forcing him to look at me. Or did our lawyers make her agree? Did our money make her agree? Did our threats make her agree? The truth was written all over his face. The shame, the guilt, the knowledge that he'd traded his own child's future for his comfort. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I loved her. I really did. But when she got pregnant, everything changed. You would have been furious. The family reputation would have been... The family reputation? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You threw away your son to protect a reputation that was built on lies? Before Trevor could answer, I heard heels clicking across the terrace behind us. We both turned to see a woman approaching, and my heart nearly stopped for the second time that night. Even after 23 years, even with silver threading through her hair and laugh lines around her eyes, I recognized Dr. Nia Washington immediately. She'd grown into the kind of woman who commanded respect just by walking into a room. Her dress was elegant but not flashy, her jewelry minimal but expensive. Everything about her radiated the quiet confidence of someone who'd built herself up from nothing and earned every single thing she had. She looked exactly like the kind of woman I'd want as a daughter-in-law. Successful, dignified, strong. "Hello, Trevor," she said, her voice steady as steel. "Hello, Mr. Blackthorn." Trevor looked like he wanted to jump off the terrace. "Nia, what are you doing here?" "My son invited me. He thought it was time I met his biological father's family." Her eyes found mine, and I saw no anger there. Just the quiet strength of a woman who'd survived everything we'd thrown at her and emerged victorious. "Though I see you've already figured it out who Damon is." Standing there between my coward of a son and the woman he'd abandoned, I realized karma hadn't just come knocking. It had walked through my front door wearing an evening gown. What happened next will stay with me until the day I die. Trevor, desperate to salvage what was left of his reputation, grabbed a microphone from the bandstand and called for everyone's attention. 200 of the most powerful people in America turned to face him, champagne glasses raised, expecting some heartfelt tribute to his old man. Instead, they witnessed the complete destruction of everything he'd spent his life building. "Ladies and gentlemen," Trevor began, his voice shaking, "I want to thank you all for celebrating my father's incredible achievements tonight." He was trying to redirect, to make this about me instead of his failures, but I wasn't about to let him hide behind my success anymore. I walked straight up to him and took that microphone from his trembling hands. The silence that fell over the crowd was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop on that marble floor. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I said, my voice carrying across the room with the authority that had built empires. "But before we continue celebrating, there's something you all need to know about the Blackthorn family legacy." I found Damon in the crowd, still in his catering uniform, still carrying that tray of champagne like he belonged to a different world than the rest of us. Our eyes met, and in that moment I made the most important decision of my entire life. 23 years ago, my son Trevor got a brilliant young woman pregnant. Instead of doing the honorable thing, instead of taking responsibility for his actions, he abandoned her. He let our family's lawyers intimidate her, our money silence her, our influence destroy her chances of ever being part of this world. My voice grew stronger with every word. That woman went on to become Dr. Nia Washington, one of the finest surgeons in this city, and the son Trevor abandoned, he's here tonight serving drinks to the same people who helped cover up his existence. The gasps from the crowd sounded like a collective intake of breath before a storm. I saw senators' jaws drop, saw CEOs' wives cover their mouths in shock, saw the society reporters frantically scribbling notes that would be tomorrow's headlines. "Damon Williams," I called out, and my grandson, God, it felt good to think those words, stepped forward with the same courage his mother had shown on that terrace. "Come here, son." He walked through that crowd of stunned elites like he owned the place, and when he reached me, I did something I should have done 23 years ago. I put my arm around his shoulders and faced the most powerful room in America. "This is my grandson," I announced, "and effective immediately, he will inherit 25% of Blackthorn Industries." The silence was so complete you could hear champagne bubbles popping in glasses. As for my son, Trevor, his trust fund is terminated, his position in the company is revoked, and his inheritance is void. A man who abandons his own child has no claim to the Blackthorn name. Trevor's face went white as death. Candace, his perfect girlfriend, quietly slipped away into the crowd, already calculating which billionaire she'd target next. The social destruction was swift and merciless, exactly the kind of justice money usually prevents. But the most beautiful moment came when Dr. Nia Washington stepped forward, her head held high, and the same people who'd whispered about her scandal 23 years ago began applauding. Not polite society applause, real, genuine recognition for a woman who'd survived everything they'd thrown at her and emerged victorious. Standing there with my arm around Damon's shoulders, watching Nia accept the respect she'd always deserved, I realized something profound. I'd spent 60 years building an empire, but it took one night to discover what actually mattered. Family isn't about blood or money or reputation. It's about showing up, taking responsibility, and making sure the people you love know they matter. The truth had finally set us all free. That night changed everything. Damon and I spent the following months getting to know each other, and I discovered I had a grandson who inherited not just the Blackthorn eyes, but the Blackthorn work ethic and integrity I'd thought were lost forever. Dernia Washington became the daughter I never had, and together we established the Washington Blackthorn Medical Scholarship for underprivileged students pursuing medicine. Trevor? He learned what happens when privilege meets consequences. His social circle evaporated overnight, his business connections dried up, and he discovered that nobody respects a man who abandons his own child. The lesson here isn't just about karma, it's about courage. The courage to face uncomfortable truths, to make things right when we've done wrong, and to choose family over reputation every single time. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that justice eventually finds its way, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that the truth always wins in the end. Subscribe for more incredible stories of redemption and justice. And remember, what we hide in darkness always finds its way to the light.